All right, what's going on, everybody? Jacked Up February 4, 2025, episode number 1 in the second month of 2025. Happy to be along with the ride with you. Super Bowl week. It is here. Super Bowl 59 live on Fox 9 this Sunday at 6:30. The pregame festivities and all that goes with it starts at 11 a.m. live on Fox 9 this Sunday. For the second time in 3 years, it's Kansas City and Philadelphia. The fourth time in Super Bowl history that a quarterback matchup will rematch, which I found very interesting. We'll talk about all of that, and we'll get into some Steelers talk as the show rolls along. And I'm pleased to be joined by good friend of the show, friend in real life, Austin City Limits Bechtold of 93.7 The Fan, producer of the Joe Pomp and Joe Show. What's up, brother? Good to see you.
Jack, great to see you too. My Baldwin and Waynesburg friend. It's been incredible to be able to go along this journey and to see everything you're doing. Pretty cool, man.
Yeah, likewise. Absolutely, brother. You're starting to host more and more on the weekends like I am on 93.7 The Fan. So it's very fired up for that for you, obviously. And for those that don't know, Austin and I went to high school together, didn't go to college together. By the time I graduated from Waynesburg, you had not transferred in yet.
Yeah.
But again, we both have a pair of similar diplomas. Let's jump right into the Super Bowl talk, my man. I know that you expressed some disdain for this matchup. I did for the most part too. I think a lot of people, myself included, especially wanted to see Josh Allen and the Bills dethrone Kansas City. But the concept of a team never winning a Super Bowl 3 consecutive years and the Chiefs having the opportunity to be the first team to do it, I think is cool. And to be around and be alive for it and to be able to witness it potentially on Sunday is cool. I don't know where you come down on it more. I know, like I said, I know that you were a little upset to see, Kansas City and Philadelphia again.
Well, Jack, I mean, I was the cautious optimistic person that was hoping for a Buffalo-Detroit Super Bowl where someone would finally feel good about themselves and somebody would finally win. And I'm tired of seeing Kansas City 5 out of the last 6 years get there, and Joe Burrow's Cincinnati was the team that is the only one that's prevented that from happening. So tip of the cap to Joe Burrow. I don't know. We saw this 2 years ago. I expect it to go similarly, even though Saquon Barkley is maybe if the MVP was a non-quarterback award, if it was not favored towards quarterbacks, which we all know it is, Saquon would probably be the MVP. How much of a difference will that make in that game? Look, I think it's fair to be judgmental towards Kansas City, whether you want to blame the refs, whether you're tired of Mahomes and Travis Kelce and Andy Reid and Taylor Swift on your TV. It's pretty fair to say that, there's a little bit of fatigue that goes into it. But if they can win 3 in a row, it is up there with being the greatest dynasty of all time, 5 out of the last 6 getting there, where it's sad to say that maybe they'll take down the 70s Steelers for the greatest dynasty ever. I think we're very close if Kansas City wins it.
Yeah, I mean, if they win this now, you look at what the Steelers did in the 1970s, 4 in 1 decade. You're almost pretty much right there with Kansas City, and we're only halfway through the 2020s, and Patrick Mahomes shows no signs of slowing down. I saw Andy Reid already committed to coming back next year, and Travis Kelce said in his media day availability that he wants to be playing well into the future. As long as those big three and Kansas City stays as a stable organization, I think, there's no signs of slowing down, and it is a shame because you've got quarterbacks like Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson that might just be caught up in this Mahomes and Kansas City era. And like everybody always talks about, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. Fran Tarkenton never won a Super Bowl. I think Dan Marino is the most prevalent name in that discussion. You might have, when this era of quarterbacks is all said and done, more than one in the class of Herbert, Jackson, Allen, Mahomes, or Burrow, more than one that might not win a Super Bowl because Kansas City's just too damn good.
And this might be, Jack, maybe the best era of quarterbacks that we've ever seen. Players are playing the position so much differently than 15, 20, 25 years ago. And the skill that they have running the football as well with Lamar and Josh Allen. I'll throw Justin Herbert in there too. I think he's a tremendous quarterback. Bo Nix, I think, can be something. He's better than the current Steelers quarterback situation. There's a long line of AFC quarterbacks that are going to go into AFC championship games. Hope will be built up, and Mahomes will snatch it right away from you. And I truly do wonder, he's not even 30 yet. What is he, 27?
Mm-hmm.
When is this going to end? Typically, it's when quarterbacks get expensive that things start to shift. It's really just a pat on the back for Kansas City. You have to applaud their efforts because they have one of the best coaches of all time. Steve Spagnuolo is committed there, and he won't leave at the defensive coordinator spot. They turn a roster that, look, they spend a lot of money on offense and don't have a lot of offensive weapons at times too, and they still find a way to do it. This whole witnessing greatness notion, look, looking back on it now, we witnessed the Patriots' greatness. Was it great? Not really. They beat the Steelers all the time. It was great for like an NFL perspective and a New England perspective. I don't think that means that we have to completely enjoy it, but I do think we have to soak in the historic nature of Mahomes as arguably the second or third greatest quarterback of all time when this thing is going to be all said and done, maybe even the best of Brady. So it will be tough to see Josh Allen not be able to win it, or at least up to this point, because of Mahomes standing in his way. Eventually, someone's going to knock down that barrier, though.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, look, in the Brady era, Peyton Manning got there. Ben Roethlisberger got there 3 times. I think you will see your share of Mahomes or your share of Allens and Jacksons get there. But I don't think it's far-fetched to say that maybe 1 or 2 of them, when it's all said and done, might be winless in Super Bowls. And like you look at Patrick Mahomes' contract, it was 10 years, $450 million. It's not up until 2032.
Yeah.
When he turns 37. And the cap hit goes down after 2027. It's right around 65 million for the next couple of years, and then it goes down into the 30 millions. So as Mahomes ages, and look, like 33 years old, he'll probably still be in his prime for the most part. That cap hit gets cut in half. And Kansas City might be able to retool and refocus around Patrick Mahomes and be able to spend money. Like that's where some of these teams get in trouble, is that they don't have enough money to allocate elsewhere because there's so much tied up into the quarterback. That changes in a couple of years for the Chiefs. And it might be another reason why you might see it not slow down anytime soon for Kansas City. Let's go to the flip side, Philadelphia. How much of a chance do you give them to win on Sunday? I think more of a chance than they had 2 years ago. What say you?
I agree because of Saquon. Like,
yeah.
He is just, and their offensive line. Like, let's not discredit the offensive line that might have 3 Hall of Famers on it right now. They moved Mekhi Becton, who was a failed tackle with the Jets, turned him into maybe the best right guard in football. What is he, like 340 pounds, just mauling people, throwing them to the ground? Like, this is one of the best offensive lines I think we've seen in a long time in the NFL. And Saquon, I mean, look, he has the ability to run behind it because they're so good, but also he was kind of a hidden gem in New York, partly because it wasn't the right structure. He still had opportunities there to thrive and still ran for over 1,000 yards when he was healthy. The fact that he's healthy, productive, 2,000-yard back, I think would have broke the rushing record if he played in that 17th game. They have a chance because their defense is also better, and with Jalen Carter, Davis, their secondary is pretty good. Some of the rookies that they drafted, like Quinyon Mitchell's had a really good year. Cooper DeJean, who they also drafted early on in the draft. Plus, I think a lot of people sleep on Sirianni, and we're familiar with Nick Sirianni's brother, Mike, at Washington and Jefferson and the success that they've had for so many years. Like, they know how to coach football. Sure, I don't think it's a good look that Nick Sirianni's arguing with fans earlier on in this season, and sometimes it seems like their culture is different than the NFL norm, but that's Philadelphia. Like, their culture of this team embraces Philadelphia so much, and their toughness factor in the trenches is what I think can give them the edge over Kansas City in that avenue.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. Like we talk about the big giant on one side in red, right? Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. That is a 3 giant pillars of success and a large reason why they've been so damn good the last, half a decade. You look at Philadelphia and you look at one of the best constructed rosters in all of football. Is Jalen Hurts at the level of Patrick Mahomes? Absolutely not. But Jalen Hurts is a pretty damn good quarterback, number one. You mentioned it with Barkley and that offensive line. Who in their right mind would have thought that offensive line, after the best center maybe ever retired, that they wouldn't be skipping a beat a year later with Juergens over the ball? Well, here they are. I mean, they're just, you mentioned Mekhi Becton. They're the great combination of going out and being able to find guys to plug and play and developing guys like Juergens and Mailata, and Lane Johnson's probably going to be one of the best, off ball tackles ever when it's all said and done at right tackle. And then you flip it over to that defense, like Zach Bond's a defensive player of the year candidate. You mentioned the rookies in that secondary with DeJean and Blankenship and the boys from Georgia up front. Like, yes, Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid is Andy Reid, but this offense for Philadelphia, I think, almost top to bottom, maybe not from 1 to 53, but from like 4 or 5 to 53 might be better than Kansas City. I don't think it's outlandish to say.
No, I think their roster's better, but we all know what it's going to come down to, Jack. Like, who has the ball with 2 minutes left in their hands and can make a throw? Think about the San Francisco game. Jimmy Garoppolo had the ball in his hand to make a throw to win the game, and he made it overthrow. Again, last year, opportunities that were knocking on multiple different occasions, and to come up short with Brock Purdy's crew. And you think about the Philadelphia Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Think about, and you could talk about the refs and the calls that Kansas City has gotten on like a holding call as well at the end of a game to win it, whatever. If Patrick Mahomes has the ball in a one-score game in the final drive of the game, I can't bet against him. If Jalen Hurts does, I wonder if a second time ends up being the charm for him and he learns from his mistakes, or if Philadelphia falls into a trap that Baltimore finds itself in a lot, where what got them to the playoffs was Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry running, and previously before Derrick Henry got their running game, and then they get so pass happy in the playoffs. So, like, if Philadelphia gets away from their running game and maybe they go down by a score in the start of the second half and they go, oh, well, we got to throw now to get back in this, and they get away from their identity, that could be another thing that plays into Kansas City's hands.
Absolutely. I'm totally with you there. Like, you look at the way things ended in that Buffalo game. Patrick Mahomes had the ball at the end and was able to ice the game away. And I think another thing that gets slept on a little bit sometimes too, and maybe we notice it or somebody like me notices it because people like us who follow and cover and love the Steelers don't have this luxury. Like, go back and watch that first drive against Buffalo in the AFC Championship game. Andy Reid might be the greatest play scripter of all time. Like, having teams being able to start fast and start with 6, maybe having the best quarterback of all time on your roster helps. But Andy Reid schemes guys open like nobody else in the National Football League today, number one. Number two, they've got the players to do it, and they execute. Like, that to me is an unforgotten or maybe an overlooked sort of aspect on why Kansas City has been so good. Maybe somebody like me notices it because I notice the polar opposite in Pittsburgh for the better part of the last 4 years, 5 years.
Well, I mean, it just kind of shows seeing these two teams and the Steelers with their identity wanting to become Philadelphia, which I think that's part of what Andy Weidel wants this team to be, building up in the trenches, which is why they drafted Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, Broderick Jones, and Troy Fautanu in the last 2 years. Like, 4 starting caliber, at least they think, offensive linemen, and Keanu Benton on the defensive side of the ball. That's what they're trying to become. But watching the personnel and watching the creativity on offense, especially after the Steelers only spent $48 million on offensive spending, the lowest of anyone in the NFL this past year. You look at this game and you look at the Steelers, and it shows how far away they truly are without a franchise quarterback.
And we'll get into that in a moment before I send you on your way. But before that, let me hear your Super Bowl pick. I think I know where you're leaning. I think I know where a bunch of people are leaning in this game, but I'm curious as to who you have winning it all this year.
So it's like, what did Bino Cook used to call it? The insufferable, when Penn State and West Virginia, I think it was, they used to play. I can't remember exactly what matchup it was. I think that's what it was. This is kind of like the insufferable in a slight amount for people in Pittsburgh, because they're like, oh, we got to root for Philadelphia or anybody in whether it be Western Pennsylvania, just our entire region. We got to root for Philadelphia, or we got to watch Patrick Mahomes do it again. It's a little bit of that, but I do think Patrick Mahomes, I can't bet against him. I have in previous Super Bowls. I'm going to say Kansas City wins it 27-24. If Philly exceeds 30 points, they'll do it. I hope they do, and that's kind of who I'm rooting for because I like Saquon. But I can't bet against the Chiefs, as unfortunate as it is.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Saquon will get his. I think you'll see a tush push for a touchdown, and I think this game will be pretty darn close. But you said it earlier. Who's going to have the ball at the end? It's going to be Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and they're going to win this game close. Like I said, I think it's going to be close just like it was 2 years ago, especially because now Philadelphia's got a better roster, a better defense, a better running back, and they execute that style well. But I'm trying to be nice about it, but like I almost think you'd have to be a moron to bet against Patrick Mahomes at this point in your career. 2 years ago, maybe. Like 3 years ago, for sure. Facing Tom Brady in a Super Bowl, yeah. Not now. Not now. If Patrick Mahomes gets there, until I see flaws, until I see a team able to knock that dude off the pedestal, I can't in good faith and in good conscience pick against Kansas City. I don't want them to win. If I had to pick a team that I would want to win, it's probably Philadelphia, but I don't think it's going to happen. What do you think is more likely, Austin, as we kind of shift gears here? The Pirates to go out and spend, maybe 10, 15 million on a free agent between now and opening day, or Kenny Pickett raising a Lombardi and coming in relief of Jalen Hurts and lifting the Eagles to victory?
What if I had in Philadelphia going for the tush push 3 or 4 times near the goal line and Kansas City continuing to jump off sides where the refs award Philadelphia a touchdown? We just found out that that's in the rule book. Wouldn't that be just so anticlimactic considering what everybody's saying about the refs in Kansas City? That's a great question. I think probably more likely that Kenny Pickett's holding a Super Bowl trophy.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I'll ask you a couple of Pirates questions before we wrap it up, but let's go shift to the Steelers here. Couple of headlines out here in the Ohio Valley when it comes to our favorite sports teams. First one being obviously what the Steelers are going to be doing at quarterback. Is it Justin Fields or is it going to be Russell Wilson? The big one yesterday for the Browns fans out here is Myles Garrett requesting a trade. As somebody that I know you like the Steelers, I do as well. That's the team I favor. How fired up are you at the thought of getting that guy out of the AFC North? Because I don't know if it's going to happen. I think Cleveland's going to hold on to him, but I mean, I was a little shocked to see that.
I was somewhat surprised and not that as much fired up when I saw that Baltimore has the third best odds to acquire Myles Garrett.
They won't trade him to a team in the AFC North, right?
No, I doubt it. But I mean, if Baltimore offers like 2 first-round picks, and it's the equivalent of somebody else offering like a second, but Baltimore's first, you get the 5th-year option, even though it's going to be a back end of the first round pick. I wouldn't completely rule it out because Cleveland needs to do whatever possible to revamp its franchise with no quarterback, your star player wanting out, and maybe your 2-time coach of the year being on the hot seat this next year. So, yeah, I mean, it's a good thing for Steeler fans to see that Myles Garrett might be leaving the AFC North. It also makes you wonder, depending on what they return for Myles Garrett, what Cleveland gets back, what the Steelers could get for TJ Watt, who I think is the superior player. You're maybe splitting hairs there. They're very similar in their games. But, yeah, I mean, I think Cleveland could probably get a first and a second, maybe a first and 2/3 for Garrett. Maybe to somebody like Buffalo would make sense. Green Bay, if they would be so willing to do so.
Steelers quarterback, and I know the people that I talk to in the Ohio Valley, especially the ones that are the Buckeye fans, Justin Fields is the consensus, and he is for me. And I think we both kind of share similar thoughts on this because number one, he's going to be the cheaper option, right? I think that's pretty much a done deal at this point. I don't know the exact financials, but I think Justin Fields will cost them less. So if he's not the answer, there's less of a financial burden than what, Cleveland's on the hands for with Deshaun Watson, what Atlanta's got to deal with Kirk Cousins now that it seems that Michael Penix has run him out of town. Number two, if he is the guy, then it works out. You have like a Baker Mayfield type resurgence with Baker in Tampa Bay. I don't think that's very likely. Number three, you figure it out in 2025 and you go to 2026 where there's better options at quarterback to maybe select one in the first round. The big question in that regard, though, is like, Are the Steelers actually going to commit to maybe getting a top 10 pick and finding that franchise quarterback? Because it doesn't seem like this franchise, this ownership group, this GM, this coach is okay with going 6-11 or 5-12 or just having a year where you suck and figuring it out from there. I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't either, but honestly, it's what they need to happen.
Yep.
They have not won a playoff game in 8 years. And think about it. 1 year, okay. 2 years, okay, you'll start to get a little bit more reserved. But a trend has become a pattern. And the overall pattern, they've changed quarterbacks. They've changed general managers. They've changed play callers offensively and defensively, with Dick LeBeau in the last however many years that it's been, and obviously the Matt Canada situation that completely failed. And I just feel like with either Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, if either of them come back, do you feel like the Steelers have a realistic chance to win playoff games and go to the Super Bowl? And the answer for me is no. Like, just no, there's not. Like,
that's the thing. That's the thing that's so, I think, discouraging about this offseason, Austin, is that there isn't a quarterback in free agency that can change my opinion on that. Sam Darnold doesn't do it for me. Kirk Cousins on the vet minimum, if he gets cut, doesn't do it for me. And honestly, trading up into the top 5, Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, they might be great pros, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in either one of their talents, especially in this offensive system that the Steelers have stuck to. Like, you get one of those guys in a system like Minnesota or San Francisco, yeah, it might work because you've got an offensive-minded coach and a better supporting cast. So the draft, free agency, outside options at quarterback don't make me think that 2025 can be a year where they take that leap.
I have no interest in anyone in this quarterback class. Maybe Will Howard in the 5th round to be a backup. But my plan would be this. You bring Justin Fields back, and if he's successful and you go 9-8, 10-7, maybe you have an answer and you can trade up, and maybe you trade George Pickens for a 2nd-round draft pick in the 26th draft that you can use to move up in the 1st round of the 26th draft. And if Fields doesn't do well, fine. You get a top 10 pick, and you can position yourself to draft a quarterback when the draft is in your own city, right outside your stadium, right outside your Point State Park, to be able to announce.
Like, are we sure? Is it going to fit?
I don't know where it's going to be. Like, seriously, like, we know the North Shore pretty well, being Pittsburgh guys. I don't know where they're going to potentially be able to fit, 400,000 people on Art Rooney Avenue?
Because my girlfriend lives in Shaler, so when I drive, I got to take 28 to Route 8, and I pass through all the time. And every time I drive by, I look around, and I'm like, and I think, where are they going to put this thing? I think they'll have a plan. I know Art Rooney talked about a bunch of stuff in all of his postseason interviews with various members of the media, but they did say, they're going to do their due diligence. They sent somebody to the draft last year. There's going to be somebody there this year. They'll figure it out. Hopefully
they will. And they might be having somebody coming back on like the Clipper. What if they had the setup at Point State Park? Like, that's where all the players are. And you take the Gateway Clipper over to the North Shore to be announced on stage. Wouldn't that be cool? That would take
a while,
20 minutes to be able to usher the guys back and forth. But I feel like if you go towards the 26th draft, doesn't that sound like something that the Steelers would want to do, though? Maybe it's more so Dallas Cowboys, flair for the dramatic. We have the draft. We draft our franchise quarterback. But that class with Arch Manning, take a breath, Drew Aller of Penn State. Maybe he improves.
I'll let you finish, but I'm going to say something about those quarterbacks in 26 that might shock you, but go ahead.
Carson Beck, Nussmeier at LSU, Sellers is another good prospect. And I get frightened away from this quarterback class when various scouts and analysts say, yeah, none of them would go in the top 6 of this last year's class. Not one. So this might be like the 2022 draft class all over again when the Steelers pick Kenny Pickett.
So this one might shock you a little bit, especially coming from me and being directed to you. If it's got to be a quarterback in 2026 right now, I'm picking Drew Aller over a guy like Arch Manning. And I will tell you why.
Jack, join the party.
I will tell you why. I forget when it was on Twitter, but I got on you for suggesting it, and I watched the kid play against Oregon in the Big Ten championship throughout the college football playoff. Quarterback's got to have talent. Absolutely. Drew Aller's got the tools. He's big. He can move. He can throw. You also need to be surrounded by an offensive mind that can help mold you. And Andy Kotelnicki has been that guy for them for Penn State. Another year with Kotelnicki and Aller excites me for the NFL prospect that he can develop into, number one. And I'm basing this off my opinion, months before the 2025 college football season even starts.
Right.
But I've had, had people hit me up on social media. People have called into the station, whether it's been one of my shows, your shows, somebody else's, and, tank for Arch Manning, tank for Arch Manning. Are we even sure that Arch Manning is going to be good?
Are we sure he's going to even come out to the draft?
Yeah, exactly. I think everybody thought Drew Aller was going to this year and didn't.
Yeah, and it was the best thing for Drew Aller to go back to school.
Oh, yeah.
He could have been a first-round draft pick this year. He has a chance to be a Heisman candidate next year. If they surround him with the right weapons, they still need to get another wide receiver in the transfer portal, but they brought in two, another year with Kotelnicki. Like, Aller needed another year to develop, but he's 6'5". He's got all the tools. He's got all the traits. Yes, I'm sure in the Ohio Valley, they see Ohio State thump him every single year, and he has not played well against Ohio State. Like that, there is no denying that. And in that game against Notre Dame, he had maybe his worst game ever. He needs to improve, but he does have all the traits, and he has all the physical attributes that are necessary. He can make all the throws. And when you watch Drew Aller in some games, you could just tell that it's there. As long as he can just figure it out in the waney moments and in the big moments to get it done. And maybe that's just something that you have or you don't. But I still think that he's got a lot where if you put him around a good offensive coordinator in the NFL and some weapons, he can thrive and succeed.
Yeah, and my thing is, like, if Arch Manning was going to be this generational quarterback prospect like his uncles were, wouldn't he have beat out Quinn Ewers at Texas already? I think he's going to end up being pretty good and probably going to be a first-round pick if I had to bet on it right now. But, like, I think it's fair to raise those questions. Like, let's just cool it on the Arch Manning narrative to Pittsburgh because you got to the kid's got to prove himself still and could end up in a situation like Drew Aller was this year at Penn State and need an extra year in college. And I'm 100% with you. Another year in that system with Andy Kotelnicki calling the shots from an offensive standpoint is going to bode well for him. Brother, I appreciate you hopping on. Before we let you go, real quick, before pitchers and catchers report next week, how many games are the Pirates going to win?
Oh, boy. Well, I'll preface it with this. Last year, I predicted 85 in the final wild card spot. I was drinking the Kool-Aid of Paul Skeens coming up and Jared Jones being here, a full year of O'Neal Cruz, and a bullpen led by David Bednar. And David Bednar did not pitch well, and O'Neal Cruz was good but not great, and Jared Jones got hurt. And sometimes I just want to pull my hair out with some of the decisions that are made at times, which is, why are we not bunting in this situation, Pirates, or something like that. Look, they win 76 games back-to-back years, and they had a better roster last year. I'm looking at 78, 79 right now just because they haven't added anybody. Like, am I supposed to be excited for Spencer Horwitz? Am I supposed to be excited for some other guy they just added into the bullpen? Like, they brought Ryan Borucki back. That's good. Andrew McCutchen back for another year. That's good. He should be hitting 6th or 7th in the lineup. Everyone loves McCutchen, but he can't be hitting cleanup. They need more dependable. They don't have a star in that lineup. O'Neal Cruz is very close to it. Brian Reynolds, very good player, but who's batting leadoff? Who's batting cleanup? Their rotation, top 5 in baseball potential-wise. Paul Skeens gives the most excitement, I think, of anybody in any rotation this year and think he's going to win the Cy Young. But, look, and I went to the ballpark 20 times last year. I'll probably go another 10, 15 this year. I love baseball. But I am concerned that unless they make a couple of additions in spring training or at the start of the season and they trade for a bat or they sign a bat and add another impactful bullpen arm in the 7th, 8th, or 9th inning, that they're going to fall below 500 again. And then there's going to be more significant questions and maybe some serious changes that we didn't get the last couple of years.
I'm going to hold off on my predictions until the season gets going on this show as the spring progresses. But nonetheless, we might have to bring you back on maybe around mid-season for a progress report. Nonetheless, buddy, I appreciate you hopping on. That's Austin Bechtold. Follow him on X at Austin R. Bechtold. You can check him out on the Pomp and Joe Show, 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh. You can also check him out hosting on various weekend shifts and things of that nature. I appreciate you, my man.
Thanks, Jack. Really appreciate it. Good to talk to you.
You too, buddy.